Welcome to Paradigms at paradigms.life, the radio show and podcast that brings you inspiring people with visions of a viable future for life on Earth that includes humans. Hi, I'm Baruch, host of Paradigms. Happy to be here with you. I'm glad you're here tuning in. We've got a great episode for you. A couple of weeks ago, we featured Bernard O'Neill and the new record Sharka with the band Chaka Chouka. In this episode, we're meeting another member of that band, the Percussionist, who started the whole thing that ended up being Sharka. He's going to tell us about himself, and we're going to learn some really cool stuff about different percussion styles from different cultures. And we're going to talk about and listen to Sharka and some other music. And I've got to warn you, be ready to get up and dance with some of this because you're not going to be able to sit still. All right, now it's time to meet my guest on this episode of Paradigms. Simon Webster, welcome to Paradigms.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Oh, I'm excited to talk with you. I've been listening to your music, and we featured Sharka a few weeks ago with your bandmate, Bernard. And
That's
so
right.
I want to find out how a bloke from the UK ended up being this master world percussionist guy.
Yeah, it's a bit of a story, really. I mean, I'd been involved, especially, my parents ended up in in a town by the seaside, which is known for having lots of retirement homes. So as well, just to add that dimension in. So hello, Eastbourne. I'm proud to be there. But that does add another dimension. I can't say I was born in London or anything like that. But how that worked out musically was, just very briefly, I had a classical education in music as a kid. I started on violin, and then I got to a certain age and a violin teacher said, look, you'll be better off in the viola section because there's a lack of viola players. And, I think it was a nice way of saying you're not really cut out for the violin. Fair enough. But I mean, hey, I love classical music, and I actually carried on playing in a classical orchestra until I was 18. But at 13, I discovered rock and roll, Keith Moon, to be precise, and got heavily into all that. I mean, what drummer doesn't like Keith Moon? Got heavily into all that 60s and 70s rock. And, just everything around that. So I was heavily into that. And then I always wanted to do music more seriously, but I ended up, first of all, doing a degree in French and business, which took me to the north of England. It was a 4-year course, and the third year I had to spend it in France because I was doing French and business. So I ended up in France for a year, and there I discovered what we call world music, the term for world music. So that was, for example, there was a massive African music scene going on in France at the time. So this would have been early 90s. There was all the North African thing going on. I mean, there was a big world music scene, which I didn't know at all, really. And the first time I saw a salsa band, I looked at the band and went, there's no drummer. How are they going to do this? This is just not going to work. They haven't got a drummer. Okay. And then they went on stage and I saw they had 3 percussionists and the band started. And I just went, this is amazing. This is fantastic. And then I went back to the UK, finished my degree, and then went back to the same place in France. I suppose it was a calling in a way. I mean, I don't know. I just really ended up there. I didn't really know what to do. I knew I wanted to do music. It's in the part of France called the Dordogne, which is a beautiful area. It's next to Bordeaux, and just ended up there and started studying and was surrounded by the hand percussion styles. And so started studying the hand percussion, started off with the West African styles. Again, there was so much going on. It was unbelievable. And then I got into the North African stuff, the Cuban music, Brazilian music. I was very lucky to have had a lot of really good teachers in France, French musicians and percussionists who'd really studied and been to these places and knew their stuff and could pass on that knowledge. And then it went from there, really. And because I was still playing drum kit, I then started combining the styles and adapting hand percussion to drum kit and mixing hand percussion instruments into my drum kit, and really started developing. My idea was to develop my own style, really. I really wanted to do that. I think that's really important in general in music. For me was to have my own sound, to have my own style. So that's what I wanted to develop. So I basically gave up working on sort of typical drum kit technique, all the fireworks, all that side of it. Dave Weckl was huge at the time. I mean, he's an amazing drummer. I'd started studying all that, and I thought, no, this is not for me. It's not really working out, because I was studying all this technique, and then musically, it just wasn't. I thought, I can't play this here. I'll get kicked out of the band. It's just too much. Stop. Shut up. But what I could do, however, I thought, well, let's develop my. I wanted to develop what I call my musical vocabulary. So over the years, I've just been, studying the styles in their traditional context, especially the North African stuff, because I lived in Morocco for over 12 years. And still have a place there and go back regularly. Yeah, and then developed it from there. And that actually, after in my early 30s, I decided I wanted to go to London and try my hand on the London music scene, because I had my style and my sound. I had a really particular idea, and I went for that. And as a result, I found my niche straight away, and started working. And then after a year, I met Bernard, and that's how I met Bernard, and started touring with him, and things took off from there, really.
That's the first part of my conversation with Simon Webster. Simon is a super energetic, creative guy. He just never stops. We'll be back with more of this conversation, but first we're going to hear a percussion track called Ganua Hip Hop. And throughout this conversation, Simon is going to be talking to us about Ganua rhythm, what that means. So this is one of those moments when you might want to get up and move your body. Simon Webster, Ganua Hip Hop, on Paradigms at paradigms.life. Okay, that's a bit of rhythm from Simon Webster, my guest on this episode. That's Ganua Hip Hop. Now, here's the next part of my conversation with Simon Webster. The next thing I want to ask you is about your style.
Yeah.
Because it's something you developed. You took all these pieces and you put them together.
Yeah.
to make something that's uniquely yours. And
Yeah.
percussion lends itself to that as much as any kind of music does, because there's
Absolutely.
limitless
Totally.
possibilities.
Absolutely.
But when we talk about a musician's style, it's an expression of something from within them. So what
Yeah.
are you telling us? I know it's an odd question.
Right, now down to the nitty gritty. So what am I telling us? I'm sort of saying, well, firstly, we moved around a lot as kids. I was actually born in Germany to British parents. My mum and dad are British, British. And then we went back to the UK. We went back again as kids to Germany for a second time. Then back to the UK. This is all to do with my dad's work. He's medical, but started off in the services, in the armed forces. He was in the RAF. And then we moved around quite a lot as well in the UK. At the same time, we had a very strong family connection to France. So we'd always been going to France as kids on holiday. So I think a lot of it's an expression of that. And more importantly, I think it's an expression of, for me, it doesn't really matter where you come from, what your background is, either musical or personal. I think it's a question of being open to possibilities and trying to avoid putting ourselves into particular boxes or being put into particular boxes, being defined by where you come from. People say, where do you come from? Well, it's a bit difficult to say. You know, I'm bilingual French. I've lived abroad probably as much as I have lived in the UK. As I said, I lived in Africa for 12 years. I'm married to a Moroccan woman. We've been together for 27 years. So, I mean, you know, so I think that's what I'm trying to say on a personal level is the idea, I think, is if it works, that's what counts. So musically, if you can take a funk beat on drum kit, and then you can take North African percussion and a North African rhythm and make that work, it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter whether purists might say, oh, well, you know, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. And, you know, oh,
yes, you can.
You know, yes, you can. Yeah. And then the question is, well, how does it sound? And they say, well, actually, it sounds good. And we'll say, well, there you go. You know, let's not pigeonhole things. Let's try to make it work. You know, and you can get pigeonholed. Some people on both sides don't necessarily appreciate it or don't necessarily like it, you know, and then you just have to say, look, with the greatest respect to both sides of the story, you know, I've studied hard. This is not just this is not a gimmick. This is knowing how these rhythms work, and they are very, very different. Cuban rhythms, Cuban rhythm structure, Brazilian rhythm structure, North African rhythm structure. They're very, very different to Western, for example, Western drum kit. I don't know if that makes sense. For example, as a Western drummer, we're told to play really on the beat, especially in modern music, especially recording now, everything's done with a metronome. It has to be, you know, we're taught that metronomic beat is good, which it is.
That click,
man, you've got to be on the click. Yeah, fair enough. All those loops were recorded with clicks. But, and then, for example, when you study Brazilian, North African, they structure their rhythms differently. So you can add energy and tension, and the North Africans as well. You can add energy and tension and push. So in fact, you're playing ahead of the beat. You have to be able to play ever so slightly ahead of the beat. And it doesn't sound much, but it's massive. And it takes years to learn to play Cuban and Brazilian and North African music like that, so that you can go and play in those countries and be in the same bubble. Because as soon as you lose that drive and that swing, then you're out of touch. You're behind. It's
syncopation.
Yeah, it's syncopation, and not only is it syncopation, but it's also they don't. For me, I think those cultures, especially Afro-based cultures, it's a very natural way of playing, and it's a rhythmic structure that's developed over centuries that allows you to add tension and emotion into the beats, but without speeding up. There's no good just kicking off and then you know after 30 seconds you've accelerated 10 clicks. No, that's nonsensical. It's not that. That's not what we're after. We're after emotion and tension in the rhythm.
So it's like asymmetry.
Yeah. It's like, for example, I think that in Western music we've taken our rhythmical structures and we sort of straightened things out. Yeah, which is great. I mean, I love that as well.
Absolutely.
I'm such a fan of that as well. It's just how things have evolved, and we've taken those and we've straightened it out. Where those cultures, they instead of playing straight, instead of playing, they're going to play. They're going to play. You see what I mean? That's it's sort of an example that means they manipulate the basic structure, which allows you to push and give emotion, but without taking off, basically.
We'll be back to talk some more with Simon Webster about music as metaphor for a personal inner world. But first, here's another bit of percussion. Again, you're going to want to move. This is North African Funk by Simon Webster. North African Funk. Isn't that a great rhythmic journey? Here's the next part of my conversation with Simon Webster. So here's what I find fascinating about all of what you're saying. You know, music let's take the music as a metaphor for the moment, as a person. So you as a person had this experience growing up of different cultures moving around, and for whatever reason, that really worked for you. That was good for you. That was good for your family. Some people don't do well with that. Some people have a hard time with syncopation, you know. So I'm curious about you as a person and what in your family, maybe it didn't come from them, but how this was inculcated in you. Not sometimes people fear the unknown. You dove into it.
Yeah. I don't know to what extent it came directly from my family. I think a lot of it was a result of us moving around. And yeah, I mean, you know, we had to adapt from an early age. So I think from that side of things, yes, it did come from the family. But otherwise, no. I think it was very much a personal thing. And then I suppose, you know, what sort of drives you to do that and to take those, you know, perceived risks. I think, you know, without wanting to get particularly heavy or anything, but I think, you know, I've always had mental health issues, especially with anxiety, and I think I was born with it. Just before I was born, my paternal grandfather died. There was a huge upheaval in my family. And I think that for my mum, it was obviously, well, for everybody, but it was obviously a very, very, very difficult time. And as a baby, I was born with colic. And then I had asthma as a kid, eczema, all those sort of things. And I think that in a way, the thing about anxiety is as well, that with anxiety makes you into, for me, anxiety makes you into a super coper. I think people with high levels of anxiety, I think a lot of us, from what I gather, I mean, I don't really know, or certainly from my own personal perspective, that you have to adapt, you have to deal with this inner turmoil. And when you're a kid, you don't know what it is. And I was from the generation, and my mum, my mum and dad were from the generation as well. We didn't really talk about mental health. It wasn't really it was very, very different. And looking back, there were definitely signs. But, I think that, anxiety does it. When you've got that underlying, people say, well, that you can't, well, I would never have known. You can't see it. You don't notice. And that's the whole point, I think, about a lot of mental health issues. You're not falling to bits. And in fact, when you've got sort of, I suppose, what they call clinical anxiety or high levels of anxiety, you just cope with it. I mean, I didn't realize until I was in my early 20s, really what was going on. However, it does make you into a super coper. And also I used it as rocket fuel. So when it was a question of like going somewhere, moving to France or doing something, I'm going, actually, well, what have I got to lose? I'm having to cope with this thing going on. So actually changing country, a lot of people go, oh my God, how could you change country so many times? And especially when I went back to the UK to try on the London scene, some people looking at me go, but you're crazy. What are you doing? How could you, what's going on? And in fact, I just channeled that sort of, that tension into making these moves and going for it, if you like, for want of a better phrase.
I like to say that anxiety and excitement are close kin.
Yeah, that's why I'm a drummer.
Simon and his wife Mouna made a record called Haleshla. Here's a track from that, Hamuda. That's Hamuda. Simon Webster and his partner in life, Mouna. Isn't that just beautiful? Mouna's got an amazing voice, and that's just very engaging music. That's also music to move by. I hope you're enjoying this episode of Paradigms. We'd love for you to comment and let us know your thoughts. And if you'd like to be notified as we put up more episodes, subscribe. All right, here's the next part of my conversation with Simon Webster, talking about another one of his records. This is Paradigms at paradigms.life. Let's talk about threads.
Yeah.
But this is a record of songs where you've really integrated sort of the Western and then the more North African and Cuban and other rhythms into the form of the song that people are more familiar with.
Absolutely, yeah.
What was the sort of impetus for this, and how was it to make it? I mean, it just came out in 2020. I know these are songs you worked with over a period of time.
How did that happen? Well, as I was sort of going again, the recurrent theme was in the same way that I stopped trying to be a technical wizard, on the Western drum kit, and, got into hand percussion because I wanted to develop my musicality and my own sound. Over the years as well, I always had this nagging feeling that I wanted to, because I did have a sort of a melodic training, even though I was, pretty terrible. Even though I was banished from the violin section. That's not a hang up. I'm all right with it. We don't need to go into that.
You may not touch a violin again.
Well, no, it brings me out analogies. So the nagging, I always had this nagging desire to write music. And, I've done a lot of, again, as drummers, we do write music. I mean, we're not usually given credit for it, but that's just how the music industry works and how Western music works. And you don't get drummer jokes in Cuba.
In the Western band, the drummer is in the back.
That's right.
In the Cuban band, they're not in the back. They're in the front on the side.
They're in the front. Yeah, absolutely. And they're usually the band leaders. They're very often the band leaders.
Yeah, Mongo Santa Maria, people like that.
Yeah, I mean, Tito Puente. I mean, it's just Ray Barretto. I mean, it's just an endless list of. And when we went to Cuba, it was the same. It was that's what we found. Although I've been doing that, it was a frustration because you do things and you think, well, I'm actually contributing as, a huge amount to this record, but, you're not really getting any credit, either on a personal level. The classic thing is that, drummers aren't considered musicians by other musicians. That's the basic, really tedious underlying current that sometimes sort of, rears itself up. I needed to go further. So I said, I actually want to come back to a melodic instrument and actually write songs as a personal expression. That's where I want my musicality to go. Because I was going, right, I've done all this percussion stuff. What am I going to do now? Am I going to start learning another, Indian tabla or something like that? And I'm going, well, this is not really where I want to go. As much as I admire that, it's a huge amount of work and not really where I want to go. So I suppose, let me see, about 15 years ago, I started learning guitar. Just on the side, just as a hobby. And then when we went to Morocco, because I wasn't touring as much, I was doing a lot of percussion and doing all the Sufi styles in Sufi music in Morocco. But I had more time on my hands as far as music was concerned. And also because we were running a guest house, I couldn't really sort of, crack open my drum kit. And, otherwise, I would have sunk my business in about 6 months, wouldn't have been a business left. So I thought, well, okay, this is the time to actually sit in my office or sit at home and actually develop my guitar playing. And I taught myself to sing. And then over the years, I, started, once I could fit a few chords together, I started looking into how pop songs come together, how they're the structures, all the different styles of it. I started looking at African music as well. I started getting into Arabic scales a little bit, and then just started writing songs. And then after a while, once I could actually, that I had enough of a voice to express what I wanted to, and maybe enough guitar. I started, when I was going back to the UK, I'd book a studio and then go in and record some stuff. And then, for example, Bernard, he's always really supported this. He's been great. He plays on practically all of those. I think he plays on all of those tracks on that album on bass and keys as a mate, without, with no hesitation, not asking for anything. He's been massively supportive over the years for that. So that's how that happened. So, sometimes if I needed a bit of backing vocals, female backing vocals, then I just, I'd use online musicians or producers or whatever, and just record the songs myself. And then after a while, sort of had an album's worth. So I said, well, okay, well, let's put it as an album and, stick it on my website.
We'll be back with the final part of my conversation with Simon Webster after we hear this track from his record, Threads. This one's called Glad to Be Back.
We were two empty bottles washed up on the shore. This is where we started, and we've gone back once more. And we both know that deep down inside us, this is where we should be. Maybe this is our swan song, who knows, let's wait and see. Parce que je suis heureux d'être là, de retour au pays. Je sens que je rentre chez moi, et je crois que je suis jamais parti. Looking back, I'm sorry for the friendships long gone, and the prophets who helped me with their wise words so strong. And I hope that one day they forgive me. It's all they can do. But I never forgot them, and my soul is yearning, it's true. Parce que je suis heureux d'être là, de retour au pays. Je sens que je rentre chez moi, et je crois que je suis jamais parti. In my dreams it shimmers, my heaven on earth. The past times look distant, but now I know what they're worth. And my roots are so deeply buried, and my blood's flowing through, and somehow this is the place where destiny's pulling us to. Parce que je suis heureux d'être là, de retour au pays. Je sens que je rentre chez moi, et je crois que je suis jamais parti. So if action makes reaction, and what should really will be. Friend of mine, he once told me, he said it'll work out, just wait and see. Je suis heureux d'être là, de retour au pays. Je sens que je rentre chez moi, et je crois que je suis jamais parti. Parce que je suis heureux d'être là, de retour au pays. Je sens que je rentre chez moi, et je crois que je suis jamais parti. Et je sens que je rentre chez moi, et je crois que je suis jamais parti.
Glad to Be Back. That's from Simon Webster's album, Threads. And now here's the final part of my conversation with Simon Webster. Let's talk about Sharka.
Yeah.
Sharka is pretty amazing.
Right. Thank you.
I mean, you all did some amazing work there. Not just, the musicality is brilliant. Haji Mike, he's on my list. I gotta talk to him next. Because
definitely.
What you all did is created, and this is what I was saying to Bernard too, all this music of conscience. And wow. And, listeners know, because Bernard was on a few weeks ago, that this was all recorded separately and then mixed together and all done during lockdown. But I'm just interested in anything you want to tell me about that experience and your feelings about that record.
Well, the feelings about that record, for me, it really was, where a lot of things came together, as far as what we were saying earlier about mixing funk, reggae, and it just so happened that it was this started off as with a North African, as far as the percussion was concerned. But for me, all that was very much a point of, well, this is how it can all work together. The album started, I had a funk, I think it was a funky Ganawa loop. That's the title of it. So I mixed a funk beat with some Ganawa, some sort of, which is a very Afro style from the south of Morocco, very popular in Morocco. It's fantastic music. So I'd made a loop of that. And this loop, it was a particular loop. And I put some djembe on it as well, which is not usually added in. The djembe is not it's not a Moroccan drum. You have to go a little bit further down. As soon as you start getting into the desert and all that, that's when the djembe starts coming in, more of the Malian influence and all that. But anyway, I thought again, hey, a bit of djembe on this would sound great. So I whacked some djembe on with the Moroccan gear behind, a funk beat, and I thought, this is really chewy. This is great. It's sort of, it's chewy. It's got energy, but it was a slow beat as well. It wasn't a fast beat, and that's hard. That's hard to get a slow beat that's got tension and rhythm and that holds itself together. So I'd had that. I thought, I've got to do something with this loop. And when the first lockdown came in, I was on the phone to Bern, and we were there going, well, listen, hey, let's send some each other. Let's do some music. Let's sling some tracks across. If you got any ideas, let's see what we come up with. And I'd already had a track that I'd done with Mouna, my wife, that was more of a sort of, that was a different track. And Bernard put some bass down. We did that, and then I was going, what am I going to do now? And I had my studio in Morocco, my drum and percussion recording studio. So I thought, let's dig that. Then that loop just popped into my head. And I said, right, okay, let's dig this loop out. So I dug the loop out, put it into Logic, looped it. And then I was thinking, well, actually, where can I go with this? And then I suddenly thought, well, as it's slow, it could go into a reggae feel. Why not? So anyway, I said, I put that in the back of my head. And I said, well, I've got this beat. It's because it's Ganawa. I said, right, I'm going to get on my guitar. Let's write a Ganawa riff around it. Ganawa music, it's pentatonic. It's really at the roots of, an ethnomusicologist will be able to tell you a lot more than I can. But it really is, loads of the jazz guys have been massively into, Pharoah Sanders, Don Cherry. Loads of those guys went to Morocco and studied with the Ganawa musicians, because it's it's a very old African style that's been preserved in a way. So I thought, well, they've got a very particular pentatonic. They've got their particular scale. So I started messing around with that scale on my guitar, came up with a riff. I thought, that sounds all right. So I recorded it, put down a demo bass line, on a MIDI keyboard, developed that, then added the reggae parts, the chord structure, and and then I said to Mouna, I said, have a listen to this. She said, I really like this. So I said, well, come into the studio. Let's put some vocals down. Just for a try. So we just, she just put some vocals down, and it was all very demo. It was really a demo. I mean, it was for the whole track, the rhythm, the drum kit take was one take. And I think it was the first take. Normally, even if you get a good first take, you go, I'll go for another couple, see what comes out. And I said, it's a demo. I'm not going to bother. That sounds good. It's working more or less around the click. which is what I wanted. You know, I didn't want rigidity on the click, on the metronome, because that's not what it's all about. But it was still holding there. It was all holding together. It was just a bit chewy, you know, which is what gives it its particular sound. Yeah, it gives it that oof. So put together the track, sent it off to and put some reggae keys, you know, well, as own, you know, in my own particular manner. And anyway, just thought, I'll send this off to Bern. It sounds pretty good. Bern came back and he said, this sounds great. He goes, I'll put some bass and some keys and I'll send it back to you. So he sent that back to me. I mixed that into the track. So I took off my sort of ropey bass and keys, put Bern's fantastic bass and keys in it, and you know, I can mix up to demo standard. I can't mix any further, but it was a demo, so I said, okay, that's cool. Sent that back to Bern, and Bern said, that's great, I'm going to send this off to Haji Mike. And I went, oh right, who's Haji Mike? And you know, he explained. I went, oh my god, this guy sounds great, he sounds incredible. Yeah, send it off. Bern sent that track off to Haji, who came back immediately and sort of said, yeah, man, I really like this. Let's go for it. And he put the vocal on. Bern sent the vocal to me in case I wanted to chop it up, which I didn't because it sounded great. I just chucked it straight back in and sent that back to Bern. And he did a bit on Haji's voice and Mouna's voice, and then that was it. That was the start of the album. So that first track is actually a demo track, and then he played it to Nick Dubula, who unfortunately passed away last year. I think Bernard mentioned it in his podcast, and Nick said, he really liked the track, and he put some really great guitar on it, and so that was the beginning of that project.
So what are you working on nowadays?
So we're back in France. We've been back in France for a year because of COVID, because of Corona, because our business was involved in tourism. Obviously, tourism was more or less completely cut off in Morocco. So we had to make some choices. We still got our business; it's still up and running, but for work and for our kids as well, we decided to come back to France. Well, we found a percussionist friend of mine, a French Algerian guy called Bashir, who actually taught me so much about percussion back in the day. So I'm working on some Oriental percussion with him. We're doing some Persian rhythms as well. You know, we're doing a lot of sort of uneven, odd time signatures, you know, beats in 5s, 7s. So we're doing that with some Middle Eastern dance beats as well that are a bit funkier. I think we might add an electro side to that, and then I've still got the duo of traditional Moroccan music that I do with Mouna, which is on the site as well. It's the Haleshla album, and then we found again, weirdly or not, we found a Gnawa musician from Essaouira, which is where it's all from, more or less, who's himself has had this really convoluted life journey and has ended up living 5 minutes down the road from us. So really odd. So we're doing a project with him. I'm doing an acoustic version of the Threads album, again with a friend of mine, you know, a bass player friend of mine that I've known for 30 years, that I've hooked up with again, which is great. And then there's all the album stuff, you know, that Bern talked about, the Syriana album, the Sharka stuff. I'm getting back into teaching as well, because I ran percussion workshops and music therapy workshops as well, because I trained in music therapy years ago and did a lot of that in France and the UK. So, you know, just sort of, you know, bringing all that back into being. So,
Excellent.
Yeah, it's cool.
Wonderful. Know. Wow. Well, you've got a lot going on, and you certainly have got the energy for it, and you can hear it in the music. It's wonderful.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Simon,
fantastic.
I'm so glad we got to talk. And
well, yeah.
Now I gotta get Haji Mike's email address and and then we'll do Mouna later. And
yeah, so, yeah, absolutely.
Whose vocals are gorgeous. She's just got an incredible voice.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell her. She'll appreciate
Please
that.
do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me and sending me all this great music to listen to that I get to share with people. And keep doing what you're doing, because I love it when people's creativity and the social mission come together. I just think
absolutely
that's the cat's pajamas.
Yeah, it is. It's a great combination, and hopefully we'll be able to do a lot more of it.
Well, keep me posted.
I will do, of course, with pleasure. And thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time.
Simon Webster, thank you so much for being on the show. I really had a great time talking with you. What an incredibly inspired, energetic person you are, and love the percussion and the songs. Really, thank you. Folks, if you'd like to know more about Simon, learn about his various rhythm explorations, he's got a bunch of drum tracks up for folks that you can download for free just to listen to the percussion and dance, but if you're a musician, you can work with them. His website is simonwebster.org.uk. simonwebster.org.uk. There's a bunch of fun stuff on his website. Check that out. Thank you again, Simon, for bringing your unique style, your unique personhood to us through this amazing music. Music, I always say, one of the greatest things human beings ever invented. And if you enjoyed this episode of Paradigms, I hope you'll check out the Paradigms archive with over 500 episodes at the Paradigms website, paradigms.life, and in iTunes and wherever else you find your podcasts. Paradigms has a Patreon campaign going to help pay the bills, things like website, server, episode distribution, things like that. Patreon.com/paradigms. I hope you'll visit the site and support Paradigms. Thank you so much. One of the things that really stands out to me about Simon Webster, the guest on this episode, is the way he brings things together, different kinds of rhythms, different styles of music. What do they say? Variety is the spice of life. I think Simon is embodying that. And look at how rich it's made his life. That's something we can all learn from. Bringing together our differences and seeing what amazing new adventures come out of that. Beautiful. So again, thank you, Simon. I'm going to leave you with another track from the Sharka album because I just think it's so great. This one's called Love and Understanding. Maybe those can be the words for the week. Love and understanding. Give it, ask for it, share it. All right. Baruch signing off for this episode of Paradigms. We'll be back next time with more inspiring people. Until then, let's see what we can do about practicing love and understanding. We'll see you next time. You be well.
You go, feel so cold. You need someone to tune into your song. Just need someone to rise up and be strong. Love and understanding, that's what we need. Love and understanding helps I to breathe. Love and understanding, that's what we need. Love and understanding helps I to breathe. 15, I even knew who it would be. But I was a rebel, a little bitty bass and treble, needle in the groove, rhythm upon the turntable, chatting lyrics on microphone. Reggae for my heart, reggae for my home. That's what we need. Love and understanding helps I to breathe. Love and understanding, that's what we need. Love and understanding helps I to breathe. One evening, an old Cherokee told his son about a battle that goes on inside people. He said, "My son, the battle is between two wolves inside us all. One is evil, it is anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." The grandson thought about it for a minute, then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf wins?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." That's what we need. Love and understanding helps I to breathe. Love and understanding, that's what we need. Love and understanding helps I to breathe. That's what we need. Love and understanding helps I to breathe. Love and understanding. That's what we need. Love and understanding helps I to breathe.
You've been listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.